Hello, everyone. I'm Michele DeLuca. This is my friend Nancy Proulx. Together we are the Power
Portal.
Oh, good. I like that. Power Portal. Yes, we are. Today we're talking about power. We're talking about turning our attention away from outside power and turning our attention towards the power within us. Mm-hmm. How to fortify it, how to magnify it, how to examine it, how to understand it, and how to use it for the benefit of yourselves, ourselves, and the world. Mm-hmm. Yeah. How's that sound?
It's wonderful.
Good. So we found a quote that we like. It's Marianne Williamson's, the presidential candidate. Yes. I do love some of her words and certainly her books and her ideas about the way the world should be. And her quote that is one of our favorites is, "Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure." Mm-hmm. So what do you think of that?
I think we had decided after we had finished the last podcast that we wanted to look at this idea of empowerment. And you had come up with this beautiful quote. You had remembered it. But
I like when I do that.
Yeah. I mean, and I had kind of a memory of, or a body response to empowerment, just because I have struggled with it myself. And we discussed a little bit about that idea of people being proud of themselves or talking about themselves, and us learning to decipher, were they talking from an ego point of view, or were they talking from they really value themselves and they really believe in what they're offering the world. And either way, for me, I had a view of, you can't talk about yourself. It's not good to...
Well, that's, I think, how we were raised.
Yeah.
Our mothers were, I think, trying to raise young ladies, and in their generation, a young lady never boasted about her accomplishments or her powers. Didn't matter if you could really climb a tree all the way to the top, beating all the little boys in the playground, or if you won an award for a paper you did at work. Mm-hmm. It is considered by the generation that raised us kind of bragging, boasting, and something that is not desirable in a woman. Particularly men, I think, are less inclined to be kind of reduced by that rule of politeness. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, I guess I look at it a little bit more globally.
Yes, do that.
That even government would like us to play it small.
Ooh, I like that. Even
the churches, the institutions would like us to play it small, because then they do have control.
That's true.
So I look at it from a I guess a bigger perspective there.
Well, I like that even better. Kind of the whole think locally, act globally idea, mm-hmm. which is it serves no one, I think, if from a place that is not of ego, from a place of your spirit, your soul, and your life's work, it serves no one to play it small.
Right. Really kind of going into that and evaluating it and having a little bit of time since we did our last podcast, I had to really think about it. And I'm like, why do we play small?
Well, let's give an example of how that might look then, because you said on a global level. So we play it small politically. We say, oh, well, we really don't know what's happening in the world today, so we better just leave that to our government or the elected officials or the officials that we want to elect, who we think will better represent us. So we are less inclined to go to, say, community meetings,
the polls,
because we don't know who to vote for, because we are convinced somehow that we don't understand, when in fact, in this particular instance, our instincts are probably leading us to where we should probably vote. That's what I think.
Yeah, and we can look at this from so many different organizations. Food supply.
Go ahead.
Oh, we accept, accept standards in our food supply that might be less expensive but aren't good for us. Okay,
Ooh,
and we don't do anything to.
We don't complain
Yeah,
much. Yes.
right. And people who maybe have less income, they're forced to become.
To eat those foods that are
Mhm.
loaded with chemicals and that are produced cheaply, and sometimes are alluring because they're also loaded with sugar. I agree with you. And the rest of us go tisk tisk, but there aren't huge, in all of these things we're discussing so far, there are people who are working to change the environment of the powerless in the church, in the government, in the food supply, and in our environment. There are people working to create change, but as a culture, I agree with you. We are encouraged in every manner, I think, to play it small.
Right.
So what's the solution?
I guess to dissect it a little bit and look at we can only change ourselves, right? Our most powerful relationship is with ourselves. So we're back on that. You know, change yourself first, empower yourself. Would be, you know, my suggestion. You know, when I look at why we play it small, there's some belief systems that have been programmed into me that when I reflected, I was like, okay, first of all, it's lonely at the top was one of the things that came up for me. You know, you're on your pedestal. Everybody's going to try to knock you off that pedestal.
Quite true. That is a cultural belief.
So when I looked at, I had to look at some of my belief systems first of all, and I think that's a great place for people to start.
Well, let's explore some more. If you, for instance, are really good at something, playing the piano, painting, writing, and if you talk about your strengths in any of those areas or any area which you are profoundly strong and good at, people may feel uncomfortable because they don't have those same skills.
And where I have shifted to, instead of being jealous of somebody who has success, it's like, wow, if I was really satisfied with my own life, that jealousy would not show up. I look at different people, you know, for instance, my husband, who was raised by a single mother who raised 5 children on just about nothing, but she always told them, you can do whatever you want to do. And she always empowered them. All of them were able to take risks in their life, and all of them are very, very successful.
Very successful. So the theme in that family was, you can be anything you want to be. I love that as a family theme song. And I do recognize that when you are told, don't stand out in a crowd, you know, don't brag about your accomplishments, don't imagine that you can take on the world or be an acclaimed anything, because that will put you at risk. That changes the way you look at the world and how you move forward. And again, that could be a generational thing. After the war, I know my mother just wanted to keep her children safe and raised us in an environment where, you know, calm down, don't be noisy, just be polite, don't stand out in the crowd. And the funniest thing is, later in her life, she began to take risks. She went back and got her diploma from high school, and she went on to become an award-winning saleswoman and won a trip to the Bahamas. I'm sorry, a trip to Acapulco, if we're being correct.
Yeah.
And so she began to step out when she got older and took a little bit more joy in the kinds of things that her children did to step out and gain attention.
And once she felt empowered, then she felt like she can empower you.
Yes.
And I think that is a dynamic that happens once we start to work on that within ourselves. And one of the things is that what I realized is that we could dream all we like about being empowered and feeling it, but if you don't take action, it never embodies, and
it's not going to accidentally fall into your life.
Yeah. And that's you know, I think that's where people get complacent
Yes.
right?
Because it's wishful thinking. I wish that I could do this, and then they don't take the steps
Mhm.
forward to
And
actually do that.
yeah, and what I have found with my own complacency is that it turns into boredom,
Yes, of course.
and then you have stagnation. Okay, just energy stagnation. Your creativity gets shoved down even more and more because you've just energetically jammed everything down in your body, and then we can actually create illness from any type of stagnation that's going on in our body, because that's the next step.
That's a really good point, because what that stagnation creates is discomfort sometimes and depression sometimes, and
Mm-hmm.
a lowering certainly of your personal energetic frequency, which you may not buy into, listeners, but Nancy and I both ascribe to, which is the frequency of your energy field is what creates good health and a powerful human, if we want to say. And I know that I often tell people who come to me seeking, I don't know, counsel, or just offering up their current life stories, that when things happen that cause depression or disruption, I think it's an indication that change needs to happen, that something needs to change.
Yeah, it's a stagnation of the soul, depression.
Mm-hmm.
And what's needed is that you need to move out into something new.
Yes.
And it's hard to give up. It's hard to give up, like even for me, being equestrian and riding and showing. It was hard for me to admit that part of my life is done, because it was such a part of my life that I had success in, that, oh my God, sometimes we have to let go of something before something new comes in, and that takes that trust, that
and
faith,
courage, and
faith.
Yes,
Yeah.
That's a good example. My own is leaving the newspaper where I worked in retirement, because it was time, and then to become no longer the thing that I identified myself around, which was being a journalist and a reporter, and having to reconfigure who I was in the world. And I think that's when I fell into that first documentary, because I was just putzing around and I found this beautiful subject of women rescuing donkeys and in their environment. I said, well, can I just do some interviews for your website? And that turned into a documentary. And that documentary, then I reached out to the local PBS station and asked them if they'd be interested in airing it, and they did, and there I was a documentary filmmaker.
Yeah.
I had produced documentaries previously, but none of them made it as high as airing on PBS. So that was a triumph, and I had to let go who I was as a print journalist, who I was as anything, and kind of cast about for my next calling, what was pulling me forward, I think.
Yeah, for me it was a little different. I had to go kiss a few frogs to decide.
Can you explain what that means a little? Nancy, as you may know, has worked as an animal intuitive, and is a certified intuitive consultant. So I'm just interested to see at what point came the frog kissing.
Well, I tried. I tried learning different subjects, like even going into the New Age years ago. Let's see, we studied gems, sound healing, body healing with Reiki. I had to go play with the
explore.
Yeah, I had to explore. I had to see what was, where was my masculine going to come out next? Where was my feminine going to come out to the world with my prince, or for my divine marriage? So I had to just explore, and I actually came back around to the medical intuitive work and the energy.
Which after your equestrian career, you kind of fell into a 5-year training session with Carolyn Mays. And when I say fell, I truly mean you were drawn to and joined Carolyn Mays' 5-year intuitive consulting program. And in fact, reminding our listener that Carolyn is an acclaimed author and a metaphysician and a medical intuitive and an expert on matters of spiritual growth. And so you trained with her, tell me the point where it all happened. Then, so you trained with Carolyn, then you became
Yes.
an intuitive consultant, and then you began doing.
I wasn't ready
You weren't ready
to be. I did not have enough of my energy in my body. I did not have enough lessons in the world. I did not yet work on really refining my energy. I was not ready to reach my highest potential at that point in my life.
And to begin, you were not ready
Yeah.
to begin consulting with people, counseling them
Mm-hmm.
based on the intuitive
Mhm.
feelings that you had.
Mm-hmm.
So, what did you do next then?
Well, then I started to focus more on the relationship of the that I had with the horses. I moved out of the training and focused on the relationship. Little did I know that the horse was actually training me. That if we want to know an animal better, deeper,
Yes.
we must first know ourselves deeper.
Nice.
So I attracted what I needed.
I
the
love that
lessons.
because Nancy and I, as I've said, have had some fun in her barn as she kind of introduced me to the work she was doing. First, as I was a journalist, because I had written about some of her work, and later because I was fascinated by the things that happened with Nancy's horses, the work that she was doing using horses, not to have the person she was consulting ride the horse, but instead stand present with her horses and learn to find their own truths and learn to feel what was happening in their bodies, which you used horses to help people understand.
Yeah, I had gone from working with the equestrian, trying to maybe better their relationship with their horse, moved on to then working with the general public who would like to come to the horse and have the horse reflect the information back to them. And in my equine facilitated learning work. And then after that, and I still do some of that, but I felt as if it was now time to step out and this empowerment we're talking about. So when you talk about even, I'm going to step out and really take everything I've learned and bring it out from being a horse whisperer to being a people whisperer now. And my own fear came up around that.
Absolutely, because that's a big chunk of change. You're saying now, well, I'm now going to begin doing the thing that I didn't start doing years ago.
But
now,
was really passionate about.
But somehow couldn't find the strength or the energy or the confidence to move forward in literally addressing how people can heal. Instead, the route you took was to use animals to heal the people, because as you've explained in every case, the healing of the animal helps to heal the human. In when humans are paying attention, of course, to your counsel or to their own interior counsel. So that's I love this lesson, because what we're talking about here is stepping into your power.
And panic came up, because what we want to do is we want to control the rate of change, which is what I wanted to do. Let's see, how fast? Well, if I step into this, will I be asked to do things that I'm not comfortable with? Okay. And at some point, I think your soul creates a level of discomfort to say, you have to jump, you have to jump, you have to take the risk.
Yes.
And, knowing this from all of my learnings and being able to drop down and really search for my purpose, it was like, yeah, this is the time. I have developed my inner world enough to feel confident to bring this out into the world. Okay?
I love that.
Yeah, so we are not given our highest potential when we're born. It's something that we have to work through. We have to work through separating from our tribe, developing our individuality, really looking at what we value, how we communicate, how we balance our work with our play life, how we enter relationships. There's so many things that we need to move through, and I guess I'm going to look at the chakra system, move through before you can reach that highest potential, your purpose.
Oh my goodness.
Okay.
It rings true for me, and I know there's something in that whole speech you just gave that I know rings true for so many of us, which is it is a progression. It's not something that comes immediately when you're a 35-year-old learning about intuitive counseling from one of the great masters on the planet, because you simply weren't ready. And I felt I was offered a television show when I was much younger, I think in my 40s, and I turned it down because it was too big. It was going to be political. It was going to be me needing to understand the issues of the world, and I was not ready.
Yeah.
And I think back on that, and I think, how would my life have changed if I had stepped into that power, if I had taken the risk? I felt really strongly it wasn't my time.
Yeah.
And so who knows what came, well, I do know what came after that. I went back to the newspaper business and had a lovely 15 years of what was really then stepping into my power, understanding that as I aged, I did have greater facility to explain things to people, to tell the stories of life in a way that might change an outlook of a reader, or inspire a reader, or make a reader feel something, something good, something that might help them move forward in their own lives. So I think it's a matter of, as you say, kind of coming to it in degrees and finally knowing when it's time to leave.
And I wonder, from what you were saying, you became a really good listener. Versus, I wonder, as an earlier journalist, were you more maybe in an opinion? This is just a question I'm asking. Do where you were able to then, as you grew in wisdom, you were able to just step aside that part of yourself, and you became this beautiful listener.
Why, thank you. That's a beautiful point, and thank you for that compliment. I think there was what I recognize when I feel back into that time is that I knew nothing, and I knew nothing.
Yeah.
Because I didn't understand the world yet. I was a young mother. I had gone late, at the time that this was offered to me, the boys were just old enough to not need me every minute. And I knew that I would have to do so much work to understand the world, enough to explain it to people and explain it literally while the cameras were rolling, with hardly any time to think. And I just knew I wasn't ready. I feel more ready to do that now, which is why I so love this podcast that we're doing.
So I was the opposite. I thought I knew everything.
Maybe you did, Nancy.
I don't know. I might have known it, but there wasn't a lot of wisdom in there. Might have had a lot of facts in my head. And opinions is exactly what I'm saying. I had a lot of opinions on how things should be done. And there wasn't a lot of flexibility in my psyche or anything. So
interesting, because in you now, maybe 3 decades later, I sense all of that, and I've seen it in our conversations that there's so much flexibility, and you do have strong opinions that serves you in work as a consultant and as a counselor, but you also understand that just because you have an opinion doesn't mean it's something you need to kind of hold tight to. And that's a beautiful thing. And I love to see that in you. So I think that's where we're going to leave it today. We're going to give our thanks to Marianne Williamson for her quote. I'm going to read it again because it so resonates with me, and I'm guessing with you too, as we've said. She said, "Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure." I love that. All right. Well, I think that's enough for this podcast. It's fun as always, Nancy. Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle.
Thanks for listening, and thanks for watching, and we'll see you all again.